Welcome to the podcast. Hey, Jenna.
Hi, Brenna.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am excited about this episode today. I think it's full disclosure, this is actually a reshoot, but we did come back to the table. We got very organized and fixed our audio and video issues that we had in the last one, and I think it's going to make for a really interesting conversation.
Absolutely. We want only the best for you.
Yeah, and this is a topic I think is really important for everybody, or at least we hope that people can relate to, because it's something that we both have gone through, and I think most human beings are going through some sort of journey on this planet towards self-improvement, betterment, healing, and we're going to just walk through some of the steps, and we broke it down really beautifully, and looking at what it takes to change and change for the better.
Yes, it's a big deal. I think a lot of us forget that not everyone is on a healing journey. But if you found this podcast, you probably are.
Yeah, and I think even if you're not on that journey, there's something nudging us forward in life towards, even if it's maybe crossing over and trying again in another lifetime, if you believe in that. There's something nudging us forward towards change and progress, whether we want to or not. I know in times I've been pushed into the future kicking and screaming because I'm comfortable where I'm at, and whether I want to stay there or not, it's life is nope.
Yeah, even beginning with that, I think that's the best place to start when we're talking about a healing journey is things are about to change. There's a very specific thing that happens, and if you're self-aware, you're going to see it. And let me know if you've ever felt this. It's when everything feels just right.
Totally, yeah, that autotelic experience where you're feeling like this is all in a bubble coming together like some sort of magic, and it's happening without even you putting much, well, it feels like it's not much effort being put in, but it's actually happening around you.
Yes.
Almost automatically.
And right before that moment comes where the blockage will show up, and that blockage is actually there to be removed in the beginning, is you'll have this almost feeling of everything feels just right. I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to grow. I don't need to do anything. I'm happy and I'm comfortable right here. This is enough. That's usually when that is the beginning. That is the calm before the shake up and the wake up, that there is more out there for you, that there is something in you that is coming up and is festering to heal. And this is the exciting part, I think, of any journey, even if we were to put it into perspective of a podcast, right? You get excited about the idea. You're like, everything's good right now. I can start something new because everything is perfect and this isn't going to change anything. That's the trick. That's the lie.
That's interesting, because I was looking at, sorry for my misinterpretation there, because I was looking at it from the other side, on the other side of healing, but I guess we'll get there, because before this metamorphosis happens, there is this I'm a caterpillar. End of story. There's nothing really that more that needs to happen here. I like to hang out on my branch, eat my leaves, and I'm good as a caterpillar. But whether you like it or not, this really big change is happening, or it will happen, and there's some steps to it. And I just think that, we broke it down beautifully. Change is inevitable, but sometimes we're not really looking for it. So in my own personal journey, I can think of multiple times where I was very happy being a butthead, and just I'm just doing me, and I don't need to do anything because how I am is good. But right before all of this change inside of me happens, it's there was something that happened that was maybe a negative consequence, or a shift in friends or finances, or something that was not necessarily great, and it brought upon an awakening that this is actually something I need to address. I can't keep going this way because all these negative things, all these bad things are happening, and I have to look and take some sort of stock of what it is that's happening. So an awakening, that change even needs to happen.
Yes, that's a big one. I think that I love the way you said that, because there are both times where coming out of a healing metamorphosis feels a little bit like the beginning, almost like the Ouroboros, the snake that continues, right? The caterpillar analogy is perfect, because when you're a caterpillar, yes, when you're in that energy of I've always been this one thing It served me well. I figured it out. I know how to live like this thing. I know how to survive. I know how to be content where I'm at. And that is a slow death. You can't live there forever. You have to evolve. It is part of life. If you aren't willing to evolve, life will make you evolve. And I'm very stubborn. I like things my way. That's just part of my personality type. I've learned that I have to drop that and I have to go with the flow. But when we're talking about an awakening to a problem, when we're talking about healing in general, usually this comes in waves. A lot of people don't realize this, but the way we're built, we go across seasons, and nature naturally gives us time to evolve, to change, in the same way a caterpillar would go into its chrysalis to become goo, to eventually become a butterfly. The process is quite simple in nature, but it's so complex in what happens, because in order for a caterpillar to become a butterfly, it has to become goo. Like, everything about it gets torn apart. It becomes nothing to become something different.
Yeah.
And that is what happens to you when you're about to enter into a new stage of healing. Something from the past, something that harmed you, or a limiting belief that has had you set in your ways, that comes up for healing because you are desiring something bigger, something greater for yourself in your heart space. And in order for that to happen, this must go. And so that's what awakening looks like, I think, is it's where you realize something's not right. I'm almost in a mirror ball. So my analogy would go perfect with the movie The Labyrinth, right?
Oh my gosh, I love The Labyrinth.
When she eats the peach, right? So in The Labyrinth, when the main character is given a peach that's actually poisoned, right? And she takes the bite of it and she goes into this world where, it just seems so good and so perfect, and it's her dream come true. And then something hits her that it's not quite right. That's what an awakening feels like, when you realize this isn't where I'm supposed to be. I was doing something else and I got stuck here.
I think the potential, right, of where is she supposed to be? She was on a mission. She was supposed to be taking her brother from the Goblin King, right? Well, that may not be like what human experience is, but it can look a lot of different ways. What are you supposed to be doing? Are you supposed to be being a good parent? Are you supposed to be working on school? Are you supposed to be manifesting your dreams? Are you stuck somewhere in alcoholism, in substance use? Are you stuck in a bad relationship? Are you stuck in financial difficulty? Are you stuck somewhere that you just feel like you can't wiggle free or get away from? A lot of times that looks like repetitive behavior or repetitive things. Life keeps throwing stuff at you, negative consequence after negative consequence. So it's not so easy. Like, I think you watch it from a movie in perspective and you're like, oh, she's stuck in an altered reality. But like, maybe those things that ensnare humans can be kind of like an altered reality. Yes. Like, you're not necessarily living your best life if you're always high. You're not necessarily living your best life if you can't wiggle free from your financial issues or get away from this like bad person or toxic person. It's that's the mirror ball right there.
Yes, and it becomes your escape from your journey. It becomes an excuse not to be successful, not to thrive. You will tell yourself, I'm in this, I can't be who I'm meant to be because this thing is in my way. And that awakening happens when you realize, I'm not okay. This is blocking me. Mm-hmm. And there are a few things that happen, I think, in the awakening period that we don't like to talk about. I think we like to feel stronger in it, or maybe that's just me.
Or victimized by it.
Mm-hmm. Is that feeling of powerlessness that comes up in the awakening, because you are becoming aware of what it is that's blocking you. The part of awareness that comes in that we like to hide from, or that I've seen with friends, family, even myself, is that you have everything you need at your disposal to change the situation. You don't feel like that in the initial awakening period. What you feel is helpless. Like, oh my gosh, I'm in this situation. I'm in over my head. I don't know what to do. Stubbornness comes in, denial, of I could not have changed this. I couldn't have prevented it. This was meant to happen. I'm a victim. That mentality comes in. You don't want to have the accountability part that all of this is starting to show up in the awakening stage of healing when you see the problem. Your first initial response for a lot of us, not everyone, is this is happening to me.
Yeah, like an outward force. Like it almost feels like
Yes.
like dark forces or dark energies, which it could be. I don't know. Like if people are religious and they believe in that, like maybe you did find yourself in like some kind of spiritual trap or test, right? Like something is testing you. But also it's just that locus of control is outside. It's external. It's like you're helpless, right?
Yeah, and I think that is a big part of, even if it is a spiritual journey, let's even go there and let's say this is an attack from the outside. The Hermetic principles teach as within, so without, right? So if you're getting an attack from the outside, it's because there's something you're battling within yourself that you don't want to see that is coming up, and it's saying, okay, if you won't look at me from the inside, I'm going to create an outside situation that makes me see what I'm battling within.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you find I don't know if other people out there chime in on the podcast here or in the comments if you've noticed that like the same situation, different people, different scenarios, but it's like the same feeling, the same thing just keeps happening over and over and over again, and it's like that stuckness to the awakening.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
to
that,
help you awaken, maybe a better way to say that.
yes, and I think that same situation is going to present itself in different ways, in different people, in different situations until you learn the lesson you're here to learn. And then that situation becomes easy. The next time you face it, it doesn't feel like a big deal. A great example of that is someone who eats unhealthy, right? Like if you have someone who is addicted to cheeseburgers, let's use that because I love cheeseburgers.
I love cheeseburgers too. Excuse my dog, everyone.
But when you're eating a cheeseburger and you're obsessed with them, you're like, I'm going to have a cheeseburger every day. And then you go to the doctor and the doctor's like,
you've gained 10 pounds.
You've gained a lot of weight, you've got a lot, you're blocking your arteries with all this grease. You need to take a break from cheeseburgers. It's in your face. There's the awakening, right? The truth is right there. You don't have a choice. You have to face the fact that your routine has to change. Your diet has to change. The first thing you're going to say is, well, my doctor doesn't know. I'm different than other people. I can eat them. 10 pounds, I'm okay with 10 pounds. You start doing all that rationalization. That's the awakening part. That's where you're starting to shake because all of the lies you've been telling yourself about the situation are now being, put in your face. No, that's a lie. You're sick. Oh, here are your cholesterol levels. Here is your weight. Here's where you should be. This is how it's affecting your health. This is why you're tired and lethargic, etc. And you can only be in denial for so long before you're given two very specific choices in front of you. You can either adapt to this new reality and change your diet slowly or quickly. You've got a lot of options there, but you do have to change and become more healthy.
Take that inventory, that honest inventory that this needs work.
Yes, exactly. Or you could take the opposite route, and that's just stay where you're at until you have no choice but to either change because you've had a heart attack in this cheeseburger case, right? Or until,
all their alternative options,
Yeah.
which I'm sure people are aware of.
Yeah.
And people, the thing is that when you're stuck, it seems like also everybody around you sees it too. And you're probably getting like a plethora of people shoveling advice at you of like, oh,
Yes.
you need to do this, you need to do that. And that can also make me, when I'm told that, because I'm pretty oppositional, and I'm like, oh, you want me to do this?
I'm going to do this instead. Yes, the rebellion.
I will show you.
And that's part of the healing journey, right? As we go into the awakening, and then it comes into the point where we have to put in the work. And the work is the part that gets really hairy for some people. And in the spiritual community, we call this shadow work. And to explain shadow, let's define it as it is defined by my mentor. I'm going to use her, Dr. Athena Parakis, for this. Is shadow work are the unseen parts of yourself that you find unlovable and undesirable. That doesn't necessarily make it bad. It means that you are taking them out of the shadows, the things you hide from yourself, and you're bringing them into light. And you're working on them. You're seeing them. You're giving them the attention they need. And, I've been asked by friends, family, colleague, but Jenna, why? Why would we want to see these things if they're parts of us that we don't find desirable? Because that's how it manifests on the outside, as we were saying, as within, so without. If you don't feel you're worthy of health, you're going to pick unhealthy foods to attach to. If you feel you're not enough alone, you're going to pick an unhealthy partner that wants to control you and tell you who you are. If you are,
They might even echo, like, in some of the things you're saying, I think that we do draw to us, like, that law of attraction. Like, if you have that partner, they might tell you, you know what? You're not good without me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that food, right, instead of like having a healthy relationship, like where it's every now and then, it's like I'm only feeling that dopamine rush when I'm eating this, instead of like learning how to find that in different things.
In different types of food that might even be better for you and healthier for you.
Right.
We convince ourselves we need these things and these people and situations. Because if we're not getting it from ourselves, we're going to look outside for that validation. And that's why shadow work is so important. Shadow work becomes, it becomes something necessary to people who genuinely want to see themselves in a different place. And I think that especially with the way the seasons are, our world actually makes it easy for us to do that, right? In the spring is when we start getting things going and we start creating new ideas. This is where we're most fruitful with what we want to see happen. This is where we plant the seeds, right? In the summer, we really toil the soil. We put in the work to make those dreams a reality. And then here comes the fall. That's harvest, right? That's where we put our work out there. And then we don't work so hard. We put in the receiving mode of what the work we've put in the summer.
Like reaping what you sow.
Right.
And finding that place to reflect as the winter comes and just really traps you in your little bubble and to live with like your decisions for a whole season.
So when you're putting in the work in shadow season, when we're in the winter and we look back at what we did and what we created, we're supposed to not only enjoy and live in what we put our work in, but we're also going to see where we chose not to put in the work, where we still need work. And sometimes when we're in the workforce, even in the fire area, right, like we're talking about summer, the reason why all these different elements and all these different seasons all work together to help us in our spiritual, physical, mental, emotional bodies is because we have those times where we're going to be sitting there in the cold, in the winter. We're going to be sitting there when things are not as abundant. And we're going to look back at how we used our time. We're going to be sitting in that silence, and we'll do one of two things. We'll either distract ourselves with electronics and things so we don't have to see it, or we'll sit in it and we'll be really honest and take an account of how far we've come.
This makes me think of, yes, the work is difficult, but I almost feel like we mentally make it difficult. We tell ourselves things that have been like repeating in our heads from our archetypes, like our parents, our teachers. I'm a super sensy girl, and I remember being a child, and when people would be negative towards me, I would really absorb that. Like, yeah. I'm a bad person. I'm not worthy. I do everything wrong. I struggled in school, so when teachers would give me feedback on stuff, or sometimes this person was just always getting praise, and I would get you need to work on this and you need to work on that, and I was just always in this feeling of deficit. Yeah. That builds up in our minds and in our spirit, and it becomes why would I want to go there? It feels really, really bad. It feels awful to have to work on those things and be very honest about those things, and it creates avoidance and just almost a desperation to just not be in that. And that could be for anything. Yeah, I'm giving you my examples, but that could be poverty. That could be in traumatic households where, a lot of different things can happen, growing up, abuses of all different kinds. We the idea becomes like run away from it, and then that turns into avoidance. And then but that's also like a safety thing, because technically you just really want to get away from like the trauma. If you put your hand on something that's hot, your immediate response is pull it away, get away from it. And not to say that like the healing of what we're doing is putting your hand back on the fire, but learning how to like work the stove instead, you know?
Exactly, is recognizing what the fire can be used for, and it's not to burn ourselves. Right. And I love that you put it that way, because in the work area, the only reason it's difficult is because of the mental blockage that comes with it. Exactly what you said. Because when people think shadow work, they're thinking, oh, I'm shedding light on things that are wrong with me. But really what you're shedding light on is where you might have some limiting beliefs that you didn't even cause. And I love that you mentioned in childhood and how it felt to be, oh, I always have to constantly be working on myself. On my voicemail, when people call me in business, I've never changed it.
I love your voicemail. Otherwise, you're good enough.
Yes,
Anyways,
you're enough just as you are. And I think it's important that people recognize that. So that's why it's on my voicemail. You are enough as you are. Because as you're bringing things to light, I'll even just share one personal one that I have that I think a lot of women share in general is it's not that I don't feel good enough. I feel I'm enough. I do. Where I get lost in things is a lot of us women were told to be quiet. We were too loud, too much, too aware, too open to ourselves in public, that it was too much. So.
Or it's not, you're not talking, the dad is talking, your brother is talking. You need to be quiet. You just need to be like, your voice does not matter here.
Exactly. It's almost as if you were told to be silent. You're too much. You're too present. And so what that taught me was to not be myself, that my voice wasn't necessary, that I had nothing to add to a situation, that I was not good enough, and it took layers of shadow work to get past that, to realize I am someone. I do have a voice that matters. I'm not stupid,
Or like, yeah, and I'm so glad that you made those revelations. It looked different for me. I think when I was a child, I was very like angry. Like my mom would always say, "You're so angry. You're just this." The anger came out of anywhere, and like moms are a different conversation for a different day. So I'm not bringing that into this conversation. But just I was honestly, to be fair, I was quick tempered. Always felt like slighted. I always felt like I needed to defend myself, and I still carry this like very oppositional, righteous behavior around with me now. It's more controlled, but I remember as a child just feeling like the sense of justice, but like it was too big for me, out of control, and I would just rage because fairness meant a lot to me as a child. I was young, but I knew that things in this world were not fair, and I know people that go, well, tough, life isn't fair, right? But like as a child, you're like wild-eyed with wonder and like, well, why isn't it fair? Like, shouldn't it be fair? Like, who made that rule? Like, I want to talk to the manager.
No, but you're right. Absolutely. When we're looking at our journeys and we're looking at where the wound was, you weren't wrong. Things should be fair. And, sometimes our purpose for each time shifts depending on where we're at on our journey, right? That's my personal belief. And I think that sometimes when we see something as an injustice as a child, people who could not make that a reality, a change, and a big change will tell you it's not possible. This is just how it is. And it's very easy for us in that time, in our impressionable years, to decide that that's truth. That becomes shadow work later. When we are meant to do something, for instance, bringing fairness to the table, is it always going to be fair? No. But can we create more situations where we have fairer outcomes? Absolutely. When people like you, who saw the problem at such a young age, we're able to recognize what's fair and what's not fair. Well, of course, that's part of your journey. How fantastic, how beautiful that you saw that so young, you know what I mean? And I think that's the same for every human, is we have a very specific rare gift. Everybody does. And it's that contribution that makes so much sense. That's why we take it back to you're enough as you are, because who you are what you were here for, the blockages that came up to hide you in that mirror ball, as we spoke about, to convince you that you weren't here to create. That's all the calcified thing that comes into our pineal gland to make us forget why we're here. That's why shadow work's so important. When we recognize, when we have that awakening where something's not right, I've forgotten. Just as it happens, that's why I use the labyrinth, because that happens to her, right? She's dancing around in this mirror ball, and then she sees a clock, and she's like, I was doing something. I have to get something done. And she looks for a way to break out of it. I believe that is a perfect analogy of what shadow work is like. It's that moment you realize everything's fine, but I have more. There's more to me than this.
Or I'm stuck in like something that's
not real.
Yeah. Because when I was younger and I was angrier. When I was young, I was angry, and that brought about a whole set of those behaviors and consequences. Because I think if you're constantly living your life in a particular emotion, and anger was where I was stuck, then you get a lot of the negative outcomes of just constantly being angry. Angry about this, angry about that, angry about not having enough money, angry about like being, why do they get this? Why do I get not get that? But like just anger in compounding ways and evidencing itself in all these different consequences or outcomes. It compounds and it becomes like glue. You're stuck in the mirror ball, you're stuck under the glue, and you're I was more like in that victim place, and I think that I think it took work. I think it took work to just come to that inventory. That's something I needed to work on.
And I think that's discounted how much strength it takes to get there, to be in that space of this is where I'm at and this is what I need to work on. That awakening part that moves into the work.
Yeah, I think the difficult work can be a mind trick too. Like we psych ourselves out of being part of this natural change because it just seems like it's hard.
It does. And I think that the hard part about it, and here's what's interesting, because when we're talking about hard work, is that it is, but it's not going to be the same type of hard for me as it's going to be for you, depending on our different journeys. So for a great example is if a woman or a man who has struggled in connecting in friendships, we'll use friendship as an example. Maybe they haven't really been able to bond with people that had the best intentions for them. That person is going to have a more difficult time putting themselves out there. Social events and networking events, they're not going to trust as easily as someone who has never struggled with something like that. If they have always found trustworthy friends and it's easy for them to make connections that really work out, that they're not going to have such a hard time with that journey. So if that person were told, you need to trust people and let them in, they'd be like, well, yeah, no problem. I can do that. But for the other person, you tell them you need to trust people and let them in, that's a much harder journey because they're like, I don't know. I haven't, every time I do that, this happens. Which, that right there, that is the blockage. They have come to believe that every time they connect, it's not going to work out. Can they see that? Probably not.
That's an interesting conversation right there because for those that haven't seen the other episodes, I work in mental health, and one of the biggest things I've always focused on is building relationships with people, because I feel like healing comes through relationships. It comes through communication. It comes through safety. It comes through being a dork and honest and like your true authentic self, and helping others feel like they can be their true authentic selves around people, because people might not be safe, and that's a natural reaction that we have, especially if we've been traumatized by people. We're going to run away from relationships. We're going to just like find our comfy, safe, dissociated space where like the whole world is just the static and we just need to stay here amongst ourselves. But with healing, it's not about other people being safe. It's not about like trusting other people or like not falling into this relationship. It's about learning to trust yourself.
Yes.
And if it's somebody who helps you find that safe space, or if you get into a hobby that you really like and you really find joy in it, shifting that negative, chronic outcome to something else, that's the goal. Whether it's with help from somebody else or through hobbies that you pick up or behaviors, it's really about a chessboard full of emotions and learning how to play the board.
I love that you say it that way because it is. It's that shift in perspective that comes with the shadow work. That's what we mean about being really honest with yourself about where you are. Because if you're looking at it from an outside perspective and you're like, this person is the problem.
Right.
And you know, in a personal journey with in my own life, one of the things that I have had to I've had to outwardly tell my people, because as I mentioned, as within so without, you know, a person is not the problem. It's my viewpoint towards that person that is the problem. And when my viewpoint towards this person shifts, the rest will shift, right? And in the same way, when we're doing shadow work, it's never the problem that's hard for us, even if it feels like it. You know, just like we use the analogy of the cheeseburger. It's like the cheeseburger was never the problem. It's a delicious thing you can eat. It's fantastic in moderation.
Right. It's
that
how
wasn't
you
the
use
issue.
The cheeseburger.
It's why is the cheeseburger consuming this person, right? In the same way, anytime we have something that is taking our focus off of our goals and has become bigger than our goals, has become the distraction. That's what addiction stems from. It's people will say, "Oh, we need to have a war against this drug or that thing," and it's deeper than that. You can take away all those things as prohibition taught us, and people will find a way to get it because it's not about the thing. It's about the importance that people attach to the thing.
Self-destructive behavior is accompanied by self-berating like thoughts and patterns of failure that were like, oh, well, I didn't make it today, so I might as well just go, go kamikaze on this whole, like, smoking thing. I'm going to smoke a whole pack today. But I think that the change and the tools that we need in our toolbox are really gentle. And we need to be gentle on ourselves as we change, because if we're looking towards making these monumental steps, well, these behaviors didn't happen overnight. They're not going to change overnight. You might find an expedited way to like change something, but it's not going to happen overnight. And you're going to make mistakes, and you might like make 3 steps towards healthy and 1 step towards unhealthy, or you might take 5 steps towards unhealthy and 1 step towards healthy. The idea is to identify what is the value, what is the gain, what is the reason, why is it important, and really like inventory that in a graceful way, to be gentle about like, this is what you need to do.
I love that you say it that way, because that's exactly how it feels when you're doing shadow work of any kind. Because I know there are so many people out there where consumption is the most painful and stressful thing to quit, is over consuming to a point where it becomes an addiction, because we aren't given a lot of time in our society right now, not to blame it, but to accept the awareness that it is a fact that we have a lot of distractions to keep us from really going inward and taking time to look at ourselves. And when I say look at ourselves, is we're so quick to blame outside things for why we are the way we are. We do have childhoods where we are developed, and we do develop unhealthy triggers and habits to keep us from feeling the painful things we've gone through. That's why shadow work is even necessary.
So with shadow work, I'm not really familiar with that, but in other models for change that I've come to know through counseling and just through like life choices, is there grace built in? Like, and what does that look like? Like, when we're trying to change, and I know multiple times that I've tried to like stop behaviors or change behaviors or worked on myself, it almost becomes the snowball effect of like, well, I'm just a loser because I can't do it, and then it like compounds the other way. So what kind of grace do we give ourselves when we're trying to like change and we fail miserably at it?
I love that you said that, because when I went into shadow work for the first time, it's the same thing, it's just a different name. The first thing that I learned was to give yourself a year. Anytime you want to make any sort of change, you give yourself a year. You tell yourself 1 year is the time I'm not going to judge myself for the changes I'm trying to make. That doesn't mean that you don't do the work. It doesn't mean that you give yourself an out. It means that you drop the judgment in this time. You talked about your toolbox. One of the best tools for this outside of therapy, because that is another tool that's very important.
Oh yes, therapy. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there, is journaling. Depending on what your strengths and weaknesses are, you can do it many different ways. For those of us trying to quit something, a great thing to do is to write down how many times you resisted that day and how many times you gave in. And the reason for that is a year from now, when you look back at that, that is not going to be who you are anymore, because you've already taken the step mentally to change that. You've decided, I'm not going to do this anymore. That doesn't mean you just stop automatically. It means that you're starting to see the need to shift the pattern. So after 30 days of journaling, the times you've made it and the times you failed, you can look back at those journal entries and see how far you've come in 30 days. And you will be surprised at how much less you're doing at that point. And then you do it again. And there are going to be times where you're going to fail so many more times than you succeed. And accepting that immediately before you begin your journey is what's going to give you that grace. Is I will have moments that I'm going to give in. That isn't the problem. The problem is staying there.
Right. Yeah. Because like that's where I know my little voice inside my head is like it can be my best friend and my worst enemy, and I know that little voice really well, and I know how I know how to turn her off now, and I know how to like stop, but I wasn't always so strong in that, and that was one of the biggest self-defeating things that I had to deal with, and take that honest look at myself and even acknowledge it, like almost like invite that voice to tea, like let's have tea, let's talk, let's have a conversation about like what is happening here. I needed to work on a lot of things in my life, and I think rage is what I was talking about before, but I had to really sit down and say, like, what are we so angry about? Like, really start deconstructing that in so many different, like, aspects of my life. And I did go to counseling, and I've had a counselor off and on throughout my life. I had a terrible counselor when I was younger, and I had a great counselor when I was older who was just so full of, like, gentle support, tons of grace, and, like, was, like, on my side. Even through, like, the thing, like, I'd have a fight with my husband, I'd, like, be triggered from my youth about this thing, and just really like explode into this terrible situation and go process it with my counselor and just be like, how do you recover from something like it? Can you even recover from something like this? I feel like I've made so much progress, and here I am, and just really doing the self-inventory, and I learning about myself, like, okay, I went into the situation unprepared. I don't know my triggers. I don't know myself. I need to work on that. I need to sit down and inventory all of this stuff, make a plan for when it happens again. It wasn't the most fun work, but who said counseling's supposed to be fun, right?
Right. And sometimes it does. It brings out things in you where you have to see where you're your own blockage, and that is hard.
Yeah.
And it's not hard in the sense of difficult to recognize. It's hard in the sense where you have this humbling moment of, I am my biggest block. But, you're also the solution.
Right.
No, you can get out of your own way. And once you identify how you're standing in your own way, I think it's such a powerful place to be. An aha moment I had probably about a week ago in a situation is where I realized with someone that I could envision a life for that person outside of me that was beautiful, and I wanted the best for them. But what I really recognized is that I didn't have to be a part of that. In order to want that.
It's like a letting go kind of thing.
Yeah, like detaching from them and the need to be a part of their life or needing them to be a part of my life. It didn't mean I wanted to be away from them. It just meant that I recognized that I didn't need that attachment, which, it was a beautiful and powerful and scary place to be, to recognize, I like you in my life, but I don't need you there. and I'd like to be a part of your life, but I don't need to be in it to want good things for you. There is no need, there's just a desire. And, for me, because I practice Tantra, the transformation of desire is to recognize that things don't need to own you. People don't
Tantra
need to.
Topic for another.
Oh yes, we'll totally get into that. That's a topic for another day.
Didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. Onward.
No, that is definitely a topic that it's worth exploring. But
we shall explore.
But my point in that is, when we're doing shadow work, that is an exciting moment. Is when we start to realize that we can own our feelings. We can recognize them. And even if they're not pretty, a good example of this, I will use myself. I am INFJ, right? That's my Myers-Briggs archetype, which means that I like to control things. I like to control my life.
INFJ, what is that one?
Intuitive, introverted, intuitive, feeling, judging. So.
Okay, I know I'm intuitive. I know I'm introverted, but yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Now I'm gonna have to do
that's
a
okay.
test.
For those of you who don't, there's a lot of free tests you can do online. Be really honest with yourself so you know your type. I think it's really important to know your personality. Mm-hmm. That is another tool that will help you understand why you're prone to the things that are hard for your shadow work to begin with. So, for instance, for me, I'm introverted. There's only about 1% of my personality type in the world. So that sounds like a great thing, but it does make it harder to navigate things in life. I'm Gonzo. Weirdo.
No, it's cool. I love Gonzo. He's one of my favorite Muppets.
Well, so basically, I don't really fit into the norm or societal norms, but the one part of the shadow work that I had to accept is that I like to have control of my life. I like things, I'm very controlling, and not in an aggressive, dark way, in a toxic way that we talk about. But see, shadow work helped me understand that, because I had a negative connotation with control. I thought, if I'm controlling, that means that I don't respect other people's right to live their way.
Control is a safe thing. Just want to add that in there.
Yeah.
It's a safety thing. Control. If you're in control, nobody can harm you. Nobody can hurt you. Nobody can come into the bubble and mess things up or move things around. And it's a safe space. And if you find a way to get to the top of the hierarchy where you control not only yourself but others around you, there's a whole other dynamic that comes out there.
So when you learn to take that control and put it in ways that work for you, I had to first accept I have a need to control, right? So that's hard. That takes a lot of self-awareness and acceptance. That is part of who I am. But now we get to the transmutation part, right? This is where the shadow work comes in, is where can I shift my need to control in a way that is constructive, not deconstructive, to the kind of human being I want to be, who I am at my core. So if I take that need to control and I shift it into controlling my desires instead of allowing my desires to control me, it goes from being something that is a deficit to my personality and something that is wrong for me into a powerful tool for me, because I'm channeling all my need to control into myself, controlling my desires, controlling the things that I would normally allow to control me.
Yeah, so in a sense, you're letting go of a perceived sense of control and taking actual control of what you can control.
Exactly. So that's what shadow work does for us, right? That's the whole point, is I didn't want to see that I was controlling, right? I didn't want to see that. I'm like, no, that's a bad thing. I don't want to see it. That's not me. I let everyone do whatever they want. And what that manifested in my life was that I was controlling things by letting people do what they want. I'm like, oh, well, that happened because you didn't let me help you. You know what I mean? Even though I had the tools to help. So there was a lot of negative toxicity that came from that I had to see. And it was a big part of my, early 30s of where I had to recognize I'm doing these things because I don't want to accept the fact that I like consistency, I like control. And so what I had to do is just turn that around. Was it easy? No. It took a lot of hard lessons. It took a lot of things not going my way. It took me recognizing that I would actually create situations in my life that would justify my need for control. I put myself in those situations.
Yeah.
How hard is that to admit to myself and online?
No,
But it's just
accountability is huge. It's hard. It makes people run. It makes people relapse. And accountability is easy to say, hard to do.
so going into accountability, because that is the next portion of this, is when you're doing shadow work, when we're talking about healing those things that aren't seen, when we're talking about the awakening process, all of it going together, having accountability and having outward accountability is so important. And we'll take it back to something silly. I actually got this idea from a pastor, a minister, so this isn't my tool, but I did borrow it and put my own spin on it. He talked about having a friend that was a liar. He was addicted to lying. He embellished every story he told, and he enjoyed it so much. So that when he was ready to change his life, he would start a conversation with every person by telling them, I'm a liar. And then he'd tell them a story. And this would make people keep him honest. Like that, like, did that really happen? Like they would question what he said. Well, for me, I would always end up with a purse full of pens. Everywhere I went, someone would have me sign something and I'd just take the pen without thinking about it. And I didn't like that about myself. Something small, something silly, yes. But I took that story and I turned it into when I talk to people and they give me a pen, I tell them immediately, I'm a pen thief. I will take this. And what this did is it gave me an outside accountability because it put it in their head, she's going to take my pen.
Can I have that back?
And they would make sure I gave them back their pen. And it's become a habit now. I just do it now immediately. But guess what I don't have? I don't have a purse full of random pens where I feel terrible like I'm taking them from people. It was something I didn't like. And it is something silly, but that is the point of accountability, right? Is when you're holding yourself accountable, you don't give yourself a sneaky back door anymore to get fed in that weird way.
Right.
You're not just honest with yourself, you're honest with others too that can hold you accountable. And in relationships, for women who are addicted to bad men, what do? We tell our friends, this is who I'm dealing with. I'm in over my head. I need your help. Keep me on the straight and narrow. When we're dealing with people, why do we have Alcoholics Anonymous? Why do we have Overeaters Anonymous? So we have a place to hold us accountable where we're saying, this is my problem. This is where I feel weak.
And it's interesting because I find in those environments where you mentioned friends, AA groups, support groups, your pastor is the one that gave you that that advice. Those are the places that I find people are struggling with the same things that we are struggling with. Because we're so unique in our problems, but it's not. It's written in books. It's done in shadow work. I didn't necessarily do shadow work, but I did go to school for counseling. And as I was going to school, I wanted to be a teacher initially, but then I was like, those people are on a mission from God, which I don't know that I'm aligned with quite the same. I also didn't get into the school. Thank you, they didn't pick me. But it did nudge me towards psychology because I was like, well, what else do I want to do? The only other thing that really interested me was people and learning about people. Well, through that process, I ended up learning so much about myself. I'm like reading in these books about human development, the evolution of counseling, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what happened to me. It makes sense now. I understand where things started going sideways. And or even in my mom's generation or my dad's generation, like this is where things started going sideways for them. And then further back, it's like that never ending mirror when you like make the mirrors kind of like angled together, and it just goes on and on and on forever and ever. And you could just see the evolution of your life through like psychology. And with that, I think we need that person, we need that support group, we need those books, we need some form of education, inspiration, somewhere where we can look to, where we can gather our thoughts and understanding of what it is that's happening, and really like take that deconstructive look about whatever the situation is.
Yes, and I love that you say that because I take a lot of information from people that are different from me because of the rareness of my personality type, I have to do that because there aren't a lot of people that think the way I do. But what I've learned is that it's beautiful to see how other people see situations, their perspective, because it broadens yours. It expands it. You see things from different points of view that you couldn't have seen them another way.
Yeah, that critical thinking is important.
Yeah, and we're all connected by desire. We all have desire. And, when we are holding ourselves accountable, like I mentioned, a lot of people will say, oh, well, this program didn't work for me. And it's like, did it program not work for you, or did you not want it to work for you? And I don't judge either way, because we've all been there at one point or another. We can't judge someone who's not ready to have something work for them. That might not be where they're at yet. So when they're like, oh, that didn't work for me, it's like, are you ready to leave that yet?
I heard that so much in counseling, by the way, just from some people. And it's like, I never pushed people beyond like, well, what didn't work for you, or like, what was it like about that you didn't like? Because sometimes people are just not ready. And even in the helper position, you have to take a step back. Like, I don't want to be pushy or edgy or egotistical here. Maybe it's just not your time for this awakening, right? Like, it's okay to, we'll be here. These programs will be here. There'll probably be new ones. There'll probably be ones that change. But when you're ready, we can move. You can move forward, or we can move forward.
And it's interesting you say that, because spiritually, one of the things that one of the things that we learned is that your body will rebel against you when it's ready, when you're not. And sometimes, things will happen to where you don't have a choice, right? Some people, like we were talking about addiction and all the different things and holding ourselves accountable. Well, when some people, their idea of rock bottom, it's forced upon them because that was what they needed to change, right? Like in the caterpillar's case, when they go into their chrysalis, when it happens, they don't really have a choice. Nature takes over that and turns them into goo. That's can sometimes be our own metaphoric rock bottom. It doesn't have to be something as extreme as some people, some people get arrested and they're forced into rehab. For others, they have a bad relationship where someone beats the living tar out of them and they have no choice but to recognize this person's bad. I can't get away from this anymore. I have to leave. There are so many different ways our catalyst for change comes in. This is why accountability is so important when you're on a healing journey, or when you recognize that you need to heal something. This is why we have to have different forms of accountability. That's where we go back to the tools. Which ones worked for you? Which ones are you willing to try again? Just because it didn't work at this time doesn't mean it's not going to work again. Journaling is a great example of that. Recently I did go back to my journal back in 2018 to just kind of read it. It is.
Isn't it weird when you go back to your journal and you read it? You're like, wow, I'm in such a different place, but kind of not really.
Yeah, and sometimes I have powerful wisdom there that seems stupid to sound like just little silly things I wrote down, but now it hits me in a different way where I'm like, wow, that's so right on. I remember writing that and thinking it didn't mean anything. But where I'm at now is such a different place than in 2018 that I realized that was such powerful information that I was going to need now.
Oh my gosh, yes. And you bring me to the final part of the steps that I take. So one of them is just, awakening to the issue. The second one is do the difficult work, and then the last one is just surround yourself with love. Be the love for yourself.
Yes.
Honestly, one of the things that I do whenever I have the remembrance to do so, a dream that reminds me of doing so, is just sending love back to myself in some of the darkest parts of my life. Girl, you're gonna make it through it. You're gonna do this. You're gonna be able to live the life that you always dreamed of. Just don't give up. I'm here. We're here. We got this. And just really being the love and support, even if I didn't see it at the time, for myself and in this moment that maybe I needed back in that moment. And yeah, write it down. Do something take a picture. Do something that reminds you of where you're going to be. It's like those diet pictures where you start here and then you look back after 20 or when you look back after 6 months of really hard work and you see all the improvements. be the improvement now, but like love that person then.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. Even in business, we talk about this. You know, when I've gone to leadership summits for business, one of the things that they talk about when it comes time to inspire your team is that beginning a meeting in that high vibrational positivity of, yes, we can do it. Let's do it. Let's do it together. And, you know, this goes double for us as women and for the men out there too. Anyone on their journey, let me tell you what I do with my girls. You've probably seen it in movies. They do it there now too. It's everywhere. But, you know, when my girls say anything ugly about themselves, they're like, oh, Mom, I feel fat. Or, you know, we take it to the mirror is what we call it in our home. We take it to the mirror, and they do not like being taken to the mirror because Mama will not let them leave till they feel good. And we'll stand in the mirror, and I'll use my own name for this, or you, actually. I would put you in the mirror, and I'd say, Brenna, you need to talk to Brenna. Brenna is what? Tell Brenna what she is. And I would make you say, Brenna is, and something positive about yourself, something true. We don't lie to ourselves. So it would be something like, Brenna's beautiful. Brenna is strong. Brenna's smart. Brenna is insightful and kind. She is ruthless. Brenna is adaptable.
Yeah.
You
like
see
that
those
positive
things.
affirmations.
Yeah.
Yes. And we need that. We need to counter that negative voice in our heads. Like, I can remember there was a specific time when I was really struggling with my metamorphosis, and I had a like out of body, it wasn't like an out of body where I'm like floating above, but like just kind of like a stepping outside of myself. But the literal thought that was going through my head was, I am slime, I'm lower than dirt, I am like snail scum. I was literally thinking those things, and I had like this moment of like, whoa, like you're really truly doing this to yourself. Like, you are doing this. Nobody is telling you this anymore. It's not the people that you knew, it's not your teachers, it's not the people from your past. Like, you, me, I'm doing this to myself. And that was an awakening for me. I didn't have a mom take me to the mirror and like help me like do those positive affirmations, but we need that counter conversation. We need that love. We need to be real. Like, maybe my choices right now are bringing out these consequences that are making me feel this way, and I have a role to play in that. And I also have a role to play in the healing too.
Yeah.
And I have the intention to try. I have the will to do it. I have a good life in front of me. I have, like, just kind of like whatever, you snowball in that positive direction. But we need that positivity. We need and it's not fake positivity, like you're saying. It's not like being...
It has to be real and genuine. Mm-hmm. It has to be something you can see from within. And I think that's where you and I really do really well together. Is that's where Earth and Fire really work well. Is the fact that we both have that ability to see that good in each other that's honest and true. Mm-hmm. And we both have that authentic desire to show up authentic, so that we don't have to hide who we are. And I love that we have that in common, because it is in different ways, but it does bring out the best in each other. That's where the accountability and giving yourself that self-love comes in. For me, with the girls, I didn't have those tools either. I didn't come from that background. Okay, so that accountability we give to others, we just need to give it to ourselves as well. That self-love that we're able to see in others. Like I did with my girls, it was, what did I need? And then I gave it to them, which in turn gave it to me. And that's what we talk about when we talk about quantum healing, when we're talking about all these things that come together and how do we heal. Healing on multiple levels, when you are willing to see in yourself that love, when you're able to be gentle with that part of you. It's not the you now that needs it. And a lot of people get that wrong. They're like, well, I feel very whatever. You have to remember, there's a version of you that has already lived, that did not have this version of you, this healed version of you, this more healed, so to speak. And you're speaking to that version. What we learn as we grow is how to take and channel that feeling and turn it into something else. That's where alchemy comes in, which we'll talk about later too. We have so many different topics these are going to just explode into.
I know, it's like it's a never-ending conversation, and that's why I love talking to Jenna, because it's like we can just go on, and the henceforth the podcast became a thing, because we just talk so much about this stuff. We're like, we should make a podcast.
And it does.
talk about
sorry.
all. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but it is. It's like a spiritual refresher for all of us, because I think all of us have these feelings, all of us have these different ideas, and we get stuck in one area or another. And then we just kind of come together and we're able to recognize, oh, well, this is the truth about this, or this is my perspective on this situation. And we find that common ground. And I think more of us need to come together and think about that. I think we need to recognize how hard we are on ourselves. Some people aren't.
On others too. I think,
Yeah.
because we don't always agree. We differ on different things. And I think that, just not expecting anything from, I think, and this is something, actually, let me give you all a framework. Learning to not expect anything from myself has really freed me to, like, not expect things from other people. And that doesn't mean that I don't have, like, standards or like, work hard towards things that I want or have goals and things of that nature. But I think just, like, being detached from the outcome of whatever is going to happen and just let it be whatever it's going to be, knowing that I've given my all. I've brought as much awareness and awakening and honesty and tools to the situation that I can to just really get through a situation and just say at the end of the day I did my best. And whatever the outcome is going to be fine.
Yes,
that's the breakthrough I think that I strive to get to. And in that sense, when people say it's not about the destination, it's the journey, I'm like, it's about both.
Yes, it is.
Because it took preparation, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So I'm going to be present for it all.
And I think that this goes for all of us, and I could be wrong. Maybe other people have different things, but I had to learn how to do a few things, and that's show up, be loud, believe that my opinion had a place and that it mattered. And also learn that it's okay to take up space. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Yeah. I can take up space, and it doesn't diminish someone else's light unless they let it. That's not about me. That's about them. But also having the grace and the love for myself to recognize I don't always have to be in the spotlight, and that it's okay to watch someone else shine. All of these things had to come in to where I love showing off and showing people the light I see in them. And this wouldn't have been possible if I didn't start my healing journey. I would have been so closed and in myself and just, so protective of who I was that I didn't want to budge. I didn't want to change. I didn't want to shift. I liked who I was. But who I was then is so different than who I am now. And I like who I am now because I enjoy making people see the greatness in them. Mm-hmm. Whereas before, I wouldn't even see it in myself. So now that I do see that greatness in myself, I'm not focused on needing people to see, I'm good, I'm great. It's more of, no, look at how you're great. Yeah, look at where you shine.
Yes.
Because I'm very happy with who I am now. And I do love myself, and I do love what I bring to the table. But I couldn't do that so long as I was fixated on what was wrong with mm-hmm. me. Mm-hmm. It made me blind to what really was wrong with my behavior. And so sometimes you have to be able to believe you're great to see where you can fix where you're not.
I love that you just took inventory there. I think it's a great segue. And if it's cool with you, I'm going to do inventory, and then I'm going to just challenge, maybe we'll end it with just a challenge for all of you to inventory. And just really end this with where are you? What are your strengths and what are you bringing to the table? Because that was beautiful. And I love how you, in the end, it wasn't about finding ways to love what was on the outside, but love what's on the inside, and then it outpoured to everybody else. I think for today, in a similar sense, I've learned that helping people is really important, but I cannot do that without helping myself and learning how to love myself. There's my dog. That's the one that was barking earlier. If I can't love myself, and if I can't be the source of discernment and seeing those red flags in people and knowing what all that work meant, I'm not helpful to anybody. And just also getting a flow of learning how to break down the situation, take that honest inventory, look at even if it's a small thing that I want to change in the moment, because I'm still working on all kinds of things, but being able to break it down, put the goal or begin with the end in mind, and then just channel it through all the way to the end. Like, this is what I need to do. This is how I'm going to do it. Maybe look at a YouTuber, read a book of somebody who's done it before, learn from people who have walked these paths, and just really surrender all of the like ego and all of the things that are like blocking me. Because I'm getting secondary gains from those, right? So I need to understand, like, what am I gaining from not moving? What am I gaining from being still? What am I gaining? Why am I stuck? And just really surrendering that to, like, maybe I don't know everything here. Maybe there's things I can learn, and if I learn these things, then this goal that I started with, I'll get to.
Wow, that's so powerful. I love it. Well, I hope you will also take the time to do a little bit of self-inventory in a kind and gentle way. And remember the tools that Brenna brought up, that I brought up. I hope some of them will work for you. I'm a big fan of the journaling and therapy. Those are two of the biggest ones. And also, don't forget to include people that you really trust to hold you accountable, people that are also on their own journeys, working for encouragement and kindness, that inner circle you've created for yourself. They're important.
Yeah, even if they're telling you things that maybe you don't want to hear because they're speaking to that like change space, just maybe stay open to all of it and just be fearless at growing into who you want to be. Because if that's truly who you are, like the butterfly, it's gonna happen. So instead of fighting it, surrender to it and just let yourself become this beautiful creature.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Yay!
Yay! And
Yay,
that's
everyone.
this segment.
Please comment below, email us, comment. We would love to hear your stories. We would love to hear your challenges. Maybe there's something that you can tell us about this topic that maybe we didn't cover. We'd love to hear the voices out there from everybody who has something to chime in.
Yeah, let us cheer you on too. We're all in this together. We're all at different points in our journey. But having that positivity of saying you can do this, just know, I don't know where you are, I don't know who you are, but I am rooting for you to be the best possible version of yourself.
Thank you for being here with us.
Yay! Bye!
Till next time.